Good morning, everyone, and starting our roll call with the Bolinas Fire District. Do we have Steve Marcotte? Do we have Marshall now?
He's en route. I
Okay,
think it's going to be a little late, but he'll be here.
thank you. Do we have Quinn Gardner for the City of San Rafael?
Here.
Do we have Jordan Reeser for County of Marin?
Jordan is here.
Do we have do we have Larry Pissarro for Kentfield Fire?
Yep.
Luke Fretwell for Marinwood Community Services District?
Here.
David Taylor for the Muir Beach Community Services District? Lynn Osgood for Novato Fire?
Here.
John Hanley for Sleepy Hollow Fire? Fred Hilliard for Southern Marin Fire?
Here.
Stinson Beach Fire District for Boonvale for Stinson Beach Fire District? Todd Lando for the Town of Corte Madera?
Here.
Lauren Umbertis for the Town of Fairfax?
I'm here.
Rob Bastianon for Town of Ross?
Present.
Sean Condry for the Town of San Anselmo?
I'm here in his place today.
Oh, can we get your name for the record, sir?
Yes, it's Tom Batista.
Tom Batista for the Town of San Anselmo. And then do we have Chief Ruben Martin for the City of Larkspur?
Here.
Okay, and then who do we have that just walked in?
And for the record, Marshall now for the City of Mill Valley just walked in.
Perfect, sir. And then I just want to announce to the committee that we have Jim Fox here. Chief, we do not have Jim listed on the agenda as a remote attendee. Can we get permission from the committee to allow Jim to attend remotely for today's meeting?
Yes, for extenuating circumstances under the Brown Act. Like to go ahead and place a motion on the floor to allow Jim Fox from Inverness to participate in the meeting. He couldn't attend in person due to jury duty.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Jim, you're in.
Thanks. Actually, Martina, I'm at the fire station because nature decided to close Sir Francis Drake this morning. So I am here able to vote at the fire station, which should be listed on the meeting places. And I guess it's on the ops meeting, but not on this one.
Okay, let's take a roll call because everyone's not here.
Can we get a vote for Bolinas?
Here.
City of Mill Valley? City of San Rafael?
Yes.
Yes, that's what.
City of Larkspur?
Yes.
County of Marin?
Yes.
Inverness?
Yes.
Kentfield?
Yes.
Marinwood?
Yes.
Muir Beach? Novato?
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow? Southern Marin?
Yes.
Stinson Beach? Town of Corte Madera?
Yes.
Fairfax?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
San Anselmo?
Yes.
That's unanimous vote of all in attendance. Lauren in Fairfax, can we get you to turn your volume up just a little bit? You're very, very low on the speakers in the room, sir.
No problem.
Okay, and now for roll of our non-voting members, do we have Jim Shaka from Marin County Parks? Do we have a representative for PG&E? Do we have Cindy Schaefer for State Parks?
Here.
Bill Cole for Ecologically Sound Practices? Greg Jones for Golden Gate National Recreation Area and the Point Reyes National Seashore?
Good afternoon, present.
Sean Horn for Marin Municipal Water District? And Tori Norville for University of California Cooperative Extension?
Here.
And Rich Shortle for Fire Safe Marin.
Here. Okay. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Moving on to item number 3. Are there any adjustments to the agenda that people would like to see? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 4, which is open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the ATC at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of this committee. Please be advised that pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take actions on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak? There are no members in the room. Are there any members virtually that would like to speak?
I see no hands for public comment, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee. Next item is number 5, which is Planning and Program Managers Report.
Great, thank you. So let's get through a few slides here. I'll try to keep this fairly brief, but we do have a lot going on. A couple of events to let you know about. We have a field trip coming up next week to highlight the San Rafael San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone project. This will especially focus on the first 10 acres of this project that we're going to be implementing. So this, if you remember, is that eucalyptus thinning project over about 150 acres, give or take, in the San Rafael San Anselmo area. It involves a lot of different partners, Town of San Anselmo, as well as San Rafael Fire, the cemetery. We've got the cedars there. And open space, Marin County Parks are a big partner as well. So this is a great opportunity to come out for the public, for our partners, for other curious folks to just come out and ask questions and really hear what we're going to do where, and ask all the tough questions if you have concerns or thoughts about the project. We're really excited about this one. We're playing with a lot of different monitoring, data collection techniques, and really digging into this process and the procedures. So please join us February 13th. I think it might not rain. We also have a field refresher class coming up for member agency field staff. So we did this last year. It was well attended. I think it's useful. It's a good time to get together and talk about procedures related to wildlife, plants, especially nesting birds, spotted owl, rare plants, and this year, we're also bringing in a geologist, and this geologist is the person who's been advising us on our projects, who will be there and also talk about erosion, unstable slopes, and things like that. So if you have any questions about that, that would be a great event to attend. It's not, mandatory or anything. It's just informational. If we get rained out on the 22nd, we have a backup date on the 28th. We'll also talk about environmental regulatory stuff and answer any questions. So I also want to note, it is nesting bird season, or the beginning of it. So if you have vegetation management projects in progress, we have biologists that can go out in the field and help you out. We have also various rare plants that are entering their flowering period. If you need a botanist, we have those too. Also want to note, as we gear up for this next field season, there's some additional coordination that we're going to be doing related to Geographic Information Systems, GIS. And we have Green Info Network helping us come up with field data collection apps, Survey 123, Field Map, etc. We're really excited about digitally capturing our treatment areas, our polygons, our acres, our miles treated. That darn spreadsheet that I send out to everybody that's probably fairly irritating at this point, we'll be transitioning to more of a digital data collection mode. So that's very exciting. We're also going to be working with Green Info Network to help coordinate with the DSI inspectors on that issue around large parcels where you have an HOA, multiple units, potentially needing to inspect a subset of that larger parcel. So we'll be coming up with a process to help with that issue. Charlotte, is there anything else you want to say on that topic?
Yeah, I think Fireside's received several requests from the member agencies, so we have sort of a backlog of requests. Feel free to send any and more to us. We'll be forwarding them to the Green Info Network. They'll be working with Fireside on the backlog requests in April, and then they'll take additional requests throughout the seasons as those arise. But there'll be an easy, we envision just an intake form where you specify what you need, and then Green Info Network will do the GIS work sent to Fireside, and the parcel map will be updated for your inspectors.
Great, thank you so much. I wanted to highlight one project that I'm not sure I've talked about a ton in this setting, and just let you know what's going on with it. It was a project that was a topic of conversation last year when we were developing the work plan and setting aside some extra dollars to do some planning in West Marin. There's a lot on this slide. There's a lot going on. We've been very busy in West Marin and talking to various partners and regulatory agencies to get some work done in the coastal zone. So you might remember in the 23-24 work plan, we included a proposal for planning and environmental compliance. And we've been very busy on this topic. We've been coordinating with various member agencies, County Fire, Inverness, Bolinas, Muir Beach, Stinson Beach, various land management agencies in the area, consultants, Panorama, of course, but also STI, because we're really digging into the evacuation ingress egress risk assessment to help inform this project. We also brought in Spatial Informatics Group, SIG, who helped us look at especially the Inverness area, all the topography, the slopes, the vegetation, and all the roadways, the different land uses and land owners out there. That's a challenging area to plan for. So we really dug into the feasibility of that and the Vision Fire, the learnings from the Vision Fire and all of that. So also been working really closely with the county, community development agency and public works to think through process, permitting, county rights of way along roads. And we have California Coastal Commission staff now assigned to us in this project. So we're going to be meeting regularly with them from here on out. We had met with them regularly previously, and then they lost a ton of staff and everybody we worked with was gone. So we are starting over with the Coastal Commission. And it's interesting, the Coastal Commission has been much more engaged in this conversation. They just put on a webinar with the same folks that we put on a webinar with, which I'll talk about in a moment, on this topic. And so we're feeling really good about the coordination with the regulatory agencies right now. So, dare I say, fairly hopeful. So we are in the middle of developing this project. We don't know what it looks like quite yet. We have some draft lines on a map and polygons. We'll be sharing that information when we can. The first time we went out to the public on this topic was January 19th. And this was a webinar that we worked on with Cal Poly's Swanton Pacific Ranch and their fuels management training program. They have a Cal Fire grant to do work throughout the state, webinars and field visits and things like that. So we had a lot of attendees from throughout the state, different regulatory agencies from the state on down to various locals. That webinar is available online, so anybody can go and check it out on their website. We're also planning a field visit out there. We're going to bring the public and whoever wants to join us out to Inverness to talk about these issues. We don't have a date for that yet, but we will share that once we do. So we've been doing a lot of outreach. Big thank you to Chief Weber, who joined me, and Davis at the Planning and Conservation League on January 27th. We also have a presentation to the Association of Environmental Professionals in March. Thank you to Kate Anderson with San Rafael Fire, who's going to join me there. We also have International Association of Fire Chiefs in March, and big thank you to Chief Tyler, who's going to be joining me there. Some additional topics. I'm not going to touch MSAs yet because we have another slide there, but post-storm, we have geologists on staff who can come out to your project site and check it out if you think that there are potential erosion issues, any instability. Just let us know, and we have folks already contracted who can go and check out your project sites and provide some recommendations. So far, projects that I'm aware of are all looking really good, really solid. So I want to take a moment and hand it over to Stephen Peters, who's going to provide an update on chipper activities for this last year.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll also keep this very brief. In summary, 2023's chipper season was fantastic. We saw expansions in all aspects. One of the biggest things that we changed between 2022 and 2023 was to go from a model where we'd have one 3-person crew in each of the 5 MWPA zones. And if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, to all crews in one zone. So that meant they were able to support each other if they found larger piles and also concentrate their efforts. And the result of that not only was concentrated effort, but the rotation allowed us to not only or allowed us to offer 5 opportunities for chipping throughout the season as opposed to the 2. So if a resident was not prepared in the beginning of the season, they weren't left out to dry until August or September. It was essentially every 5 weeks, the crews would be back in the area and we could help out more people. Next slide. And so the result of that is we saw huge increases, not only in our pickups, which were up 35% over 2002, but the material that we got out of residents' yards. So we saw almost over 3,700 more cubic yards removed over 2022, and 18% more new to the program residents engaged. That was also helped by an additional partnership with Fireside, where we did a targeted ad campaign and outreach campaign to areas that were identified as low participating. So we reached out to them directly. We sent mailers, we sent emails, and we made it very easy for them to sign up and understand how the program worked. We also streamlined how the sign-up process worked, let them check in on their reservations, and gave them additional updates of when their reservation was, both by email and by text message. And we saw text messages were a huge help in both reminding people to do the work and making it easier if they weren't ready to get their material chipped to cancel that reservation, which cut down on our crew showing up at houses that had nothing for them to chip. Finally, we still retained essentially the same approval rating that we had in years past, which is 90% of residents who participate in the program and answer our surveys gave us 5 out of 5 stars. So public perception of this is still really high. Looking forward to 2024 in this season, we're going to continue that model of every 5 weeks, we'll come back to each zone. But we're going to add an additional round of chipping. So this year there'll be 6 rounds of chipping for essentially a comparable price. Additionally, we're going to work on tightening up service windows. So residents no longer are going to have to wait or be told that between Monday and Friday we're going to come. It's going to be a lot tighter than that. So people are going to know when our crews are going to show up, and the piles will stay on the curbside for a very much shorter window of time. And last but not least, we're going to continue our partnership with the Fire Foundry. That's something I forgot to mention. We partnered with Fire Foundry this year to do green waste drop-off events. So for a lot of residents, the curbside is great, but they want to get more material out. And so what we're doing is adding a second way they can dispose of that, which is in a centralized location. We'll park a chipper there. People can come down, bring it there, chip as much as they want, as much as they can bring. It's on top of the service we're already offering. So people can pick and choose or use both. But we're looking forward to this next season, and we're excited to continue on our upward progress. And that's all I got. And thank you, guys.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, so at this point, I'm hoping that we can bring Ted Briggs over as a panelist so he can talk a little bit about the contracting.
And Ted is rejoining us as a panelist. Ted, let us know when you are able to start speaking, sir.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent, thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Ted Briggs. I'm one of the vegetation management specialists for MWPA. And I was the person that drove the recent contracting activity that we had for vegetation management services. And I'm here to provide you just a very brief update on the status. So there was a team of folks between MWPA and our member agencies that participated in this activity, both evaluating and scoring the proposals that we received. We made some preliminary sourcing decisions. Those decisions were approved on January 18th by the board. We then sent fully executed agreements to those suppliers at the end of the month. And I'm very pleased to say that we are already actively working with 2 of the member agencies now on drafting task orders with these newly executed master services agreements for some upcoming work. And just a quick note on the nomenclature here: master services agreement in this context is simply a mutual agreement on general legal and commercial terms. It does not, the MSA itself does not authorize any work. It does not authorize any money to be used for any work. That authorization only comes in a task order. And so, as I say, there are task orders right now being drafted both by Novato Fire District and also the San Rafael Fire Department with those. So it's good to see that that this MSA activity is taking on some steam, and that we are hopefully we're providing some value to our member service or to our member agencies here. And then in terms of next steps, I'm in the process now of developing some rollout materials for our member agencies, meaning to provide some general direction to all on how all of this works, where they can find templates for task orders and best practices for developing task orders, what the approval criteria look like, etc. And then in early to mid-March, I'm going to deliver that rollout to all agencies, probably in the form of a PowerPoint set of slides, but also happy to engage with any member agency for one-on-one support as well. And off to the right-hand side, you can see what the results are of our sourcing decisions. We have a total of 11 contractors now under a master services agreement across 5 different disciplines that you see off to the side of that. So for licensed landscaping, licensed herbicide application, licensed tree service, licensed timber operator, and then also a few for doing ecological services, planting and restoration. Are there any questions?
Hey,
Thanks,
this
Bill.
is Jordan, and maybe you're not the one to answer this, but is this is this just for new contracts going out for specific projects? Because originally, is there still a master list of contractors that we can utilize at the local level for smaller level contracts and stuff we've been doing, or are these the only approved contractors now to be used through the MWPA core project funds or others?
I can
Yeah,
answer.
that's a great question. So this establishes the list of those suppliers that we have selected at this time for use by MW, for use with Measure C funds. Now, the
Ted, can I
MSAs.
interrupt?
Sure.
We do have a list of qualified contractors that we put together last year, and that works for projects, especially under 200K. So that
Okay,
still
yeah.
exists and can be used.
Yeah, that's perfect. That was my question. And sorry, I should have framed it that way. It just says we're using on these kind of smaller level projects that are, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have, Ted's going to be rolling out information to all the member agencies on this, on the process for the master services agreements. And then he can also include information on how to use the list of qualified contractors as well in that. All right, thanks, Jordan. Any other questions on this topic? That's our last slide for this item. Any other questions on any of the other topics raised?
Yeah, I had one question regarding the chipper program, Steve. You mentioned the availability for green waste days. Is that an additional cost to the member agencies, or is that part of the chipper program to where, say, if we had a community that wanted to do that and we participated in it and scheduled that through you, would that be an additional fee or not?
No, that's part of the core program.
Okay, and how many of these events can a member agency request?
At this time, we're still working that specific out. We're aiming to offer, the opportunity for right now, at least one per agency, but if some agencies are not requesting those, we can reallocate them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we would go ahead and schedule that through you?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Similar question for regarding the chipper program. In the numbers that you gave about 2022, did that include the central site drop-offs?
It did, yeah.
How do you think that was the contribution of like what increased it so much?
We don't
How-
think so. We think it was the ability for residents to schedule multiple events. The annual report, which is out currently on our website, details how much those events we pulled how much those events chipped in and of themselves. It's about 300 cubic yards. So that increase, while it's definitely that adds to it, is not the driving force.
And then does the annual report have like the geographic breakdowns in it?
Yes.
Great,
yes.
I'll look at those. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Ann or staff? Anyone virtually have a question? No, okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead. Was that the end of your report?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you very much. Seems like you guys are very busy. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 6, which is the consent calendar. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on consent agendas that will occur prior to the committee's discussion of the consent item. The committee may approve the entire consent agenda with one action, and the alternative items on the consent agenda may be removed by any committee member, staff member, for separate discussion. The only item is 6A, which are the minutes from our January 10th meeting. If no one wants to pull that item, can I get a motion to have the minutes approved?
So moved.
Okay, Todd Lander with the first. Can I get a second?
I'll get a second.
Okay, Larry Passero with the second. May we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Starting with Steve Marcotte,
Yes.
Marshall Now,
Yes.
Quinn Gardner,
I think I need to abstain because I missed that meeting.
Jordan Reeser,
Yes.
Jim Fox, we have Jim for the meeting, correct?
Yes.
Jim, did you want to vote on consent? Larry Passero,
Yes.
Luke Retwell,
Yes.
Lynn Osgood,
Yes.
Fred Hilliard, Todd Lando,
Yes.
Lauren Umbertus,
Lando,
Yes.
yes.
Lauren Umbertus,
Yes.
Rob Bashanon,
Yes.
Sean Condry.
Uh,
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom Bautista.
I'll need to abstain.
Apologies, sir. You abstain. Okay. And so we do have a unanimous vote, sir, to motion carries for the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 7, discussion item 7A. It's the fiscal year 2024-25 work plan development update. Do we have a report?
Yes, we do. So you've seen this slide before. You'll see it a few more times before we're through. We're currently in kind of a lull and we'll be hopefully seeing a lot of proposals entered into the work plan portal in the coming weeks. We plan on submitting JPA-wide proposals by March 1st. If you have thoughts about JPA-wide proposals, let us know. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I added an item to this this calendar to note when we're going to be able to have that February to February U.S. Bureau of Labor statistics data to help us figure out what our revenue is going to be for next fiscal year. That's going to be released March 12th. In our JPA language, we're obligated to use February to February, and that's when the February data is coming out. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Still looking to have initial drafts of all proposals in March 15th so we can get an idea for what we're looking at, and final proposals by March 31st. There's still time to, tweak language and think through budget and all of that. I think now would probably be a good time for the chair and vice chair to think through ad hoc subcommittees to review, draft proposals, work through any particular issues that might be of concern to the ATC. So now might be a good time to do that offline. And then in March and April, we'll really be trying to daylight as many proposals as possible so the public is aware of what we're planning and proposing and thinking through. So be prepared for some presentations and additional kind of project level discussion at those meetings. And then, by May 2nd, I think we're going to be seeing the Operations Committee making a final recommendation to the board on the work plan and budget. So it'll be, a busy season, and we're hoping that by May 16th, we'll have the board approval of the draft work plan and budget. I wanted to share where Operations Committee is on the kind of overall guidance for the work plan development. They decided to dig into the language a little bit this year. And so this is where we are currently. And I think this is generally where we're going to be for this season. The Operations Committee took a vote on this last month. And so I think we have the language that we have. There may be some terminology shifts in the next few weeks as we play around with that term shaded fuel break and what that is. And if it's a fuel reduction zone, a hazardous fuel reduction area, et cetera. There are a lot of different terms that you can use there. But generally, here's where we are. Continuing with the house out approach, I think we all agree that that is a key to our strategy as the MWPA and our member agencies. We decided to dig into the grant program language and address the need for more direct assistance. So you'll see a change here. Continue to reduce wildfire risk to communities by providing resources directly to residents for home hardening and defensible space activities. And that's reflecting the conversations that are going on right now around the grant program and direct assistance to residents. Additionally, prioritize shaded fuel breaks, or whatever that terminology is going to end up being, directly adjacent to communities, but also explore the potential for strategically placed local or landscape, depending on which term you prefer, area treatments or splats, and then informed by pathways modeling. That was another suggestion from Chief Tyler. Expand the use of prescribed fire and public education and involvement around beneficial fire. I think we're going to see some opportunities around that in the next year or so. Continue to prioritize evacuation planning and projects to improve safe and efficient evacuations. That has been a priority of ours, and I think it will continue to be so. This is a super important role for the MWPA and our member agencies. Partner with insurance companies and the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, IBHS, to help avoid insurance cancellations and control costs for homeowners. So the only change there is at addressing the cost question. And then in the end, or the end bullet here, increase public education, particularly to new audiences. We're adding language, which is support activities that fire agencies and Marin residents can take, such as home hardening and defensible space, particularly Zone 0, safe evacuations, and reducing human-caused ignitions. So a bit more specificity in the public education arena. So that is what the Operations Committee discussed, and I think that that really fits in with the proposals we're going to be seeing this year. And then I want to invite Charlotte Jourdain to provide an update, speaking of public education, in terms of the work that the Wildfire Risk Perception Survey and what we might be seeing this year as a result of that work.
Good afternoon, committee members and members of the public. My name is Charlotte Jourdain. I'm an independent contractor for the Marine Wildfire Prevention Authority. So I'll provide an update on a project that was approved during the previous 2 work plans and is continuing conducting a community survey to assess wildfire risk perceptions. So just as a reminder, the goal of the survey is to complement other existing surveys and other qualitative data about residents' perception of risks and need. And we do this through this survey, particularly by working with community-based organizations to increase the participation of those communities that are traditionally underrepresented in mainstream survey instruments. The reason we want to engage and understand residents' perception of risk and needs is because we know the ability to perceive risk is a key to residents' engagement in the prevention process, whether it's creating defensible space, hardening the home, signing up for alerts, having a to-go bag, etc. And we know, of course, that early departure in the event of an evacuation warning or order is crucial to positive outcomes. We would like to use the results of this survey to compare and contrast the perceived risks by community with the assessed risk. And I'm thinking in particular with the results of our evacuation ingress egress assessment, but also the presentation you'll hear about on the next agenda item about vegetation management and on-parcel risk. This will allow us then to identify programming needs, guide our communication efforts, enhance them, provide targeted education and outreach to those communities. And then lastly, we want to create benchmark data to track our progress. As a reminder, the community partners we are working with for these efforts are listed on this slide. We did not identify a community partner in Central Marin after almost 12 months of efforts, but we're working with different agencies, different groups there, and gathering responses in a more sort of at-large type of format and through community events. The response collection efforts are almost finished. They'll be wrapping up at the end of this month. The team is working to modify the methodology as needed in those areas with lower than anticipated response rates, particularly in Marin City and for Central Marin or the other at-large survey responses that we're gathering. Overall, we have a really strong response rate of 80%, except for those 2 communities I mentioned. The next steps will be to dig through the results and provide an analysis that helps us contrast with the assessed risk, as I mentioned. This will involve each of the community-based organization for the results for their area, the local agency for that area, and then, of course, Fire Safe Marin and other partners in education and outreach. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions for Charlotte? Belle, you're on mute.
Yeah. Hi, this is fascinating. One question, did you see any surprises as you were dealing with this survey?
Thank you, Belle, for that question. So we are still in the process of gathering responses. We have sort of curiously started to look at them, but we don't have results that I can share right now. I think definitely some surprises in many ways, but we'll be sharing that in the next few months.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee. Do we need to take this comment out to public as a discussion item? No. Okay. We have no one in the public. We'll bring it back. Now moving on to item 7B, which is the risk modeling update. We have a report, please.
What? Oh, yes. Yes, thank you. So on the next item, I'm really pleased to introduce to the group Scott Farley from Willow Labs, who will provide an overview of the 3rd phase of work that we've been pursuing to assess the risk, both from the fuel breaks and vegetation management projects, but also for the on-parcel risk in the built environment. Just as a brief reminder, we model risk to help us prioritize resources in the transition area between the wildlands and the built environment. You know, I'd like to call the committee's attention as you hear the presentation on the importance of the data. I know your agencies and your teams spend a lot of effort gathering data, both on the inspection side and also, as we heard from Anne, you know, moving with new tools in terms of gathering data for fuel breaks. Just know that this data is very precious. These data sets that we are creating here are extremely valuable, and you will hear now an illustration of why that is. Scott, please go ahead.
Hey, great, thanks. Just gonna grab my screen share here. Can everybody see my slideshow? Awesome.
Yeah, and we can hear you.
So I'm Scott Farley. Today I'm going to be taking you on a tour of a few different ways that we can use data to inform our community safety programming. So first off, I think it's useful to conceptualize all of the things that we could do around wildfire risk mitigation as a system. We can have things that alter public behavior, alerting, traffic flow during evacuations, public education and outreach. We can also do things that directly alter fire behavior. Working from the house out, right? We can do home hardening. We can look at the combustibles and vegetation on parcel and defensible space. Moving out to the community scale, we can look at shaded fuel breaks, these strategically placed landscape treatments, the splats. And we need to do all of these things in combination to create a resilient community. And so today I'm going to talk about two projects that use data on this altering fire behavior portion of the system. One is on that home hardening defensible space component, and one is the shaded fuel breaks and splat component. And then towards the end of the conversation, I'm going to bring it back to how we use these two things together to really inform the strategic systematic planning when we combine the results from these two analyses. So first off, looking at on-parcel risk analysis, this is using the fireside data that's coming out of the inspection programs to come up with quantitative assessments of risk for each discovery. So looking at each individual point that's recorded by an inspector and looking at the potential for that to cast embers on downwind structures, looking for the potential to expose nearby structures to direct flame contact, including structural vulnerabilities and the role of home hardening, and the role of fuel bed continuity and low intensity fire, yet still potentially posing a risk to structure ignition. And the way that we do that is to take the inspection data, what kind of thing was found, where was it found, how big was that thing, and combine it with a lot of other data. So that's weather data, looking at two different weather scenarios, a Diablo weather scenario and a dry sea breeze scenario, and running that through a computational fluid dynamics model that looks at locally specific winds. Also combining that with vegetation and topographic data, specifically looking at canopy cover and vegetation height from the fine scale fuel mapping project to understand how the prevailing vegetation may affect ember dispersal. And then looking at structure data and understanding the spatial relationships between the discoveries that we find on the parcel and the structure set and the nearby structures, as well as the density of the neighborhood in which the discovery was found. We run all of that data through a set of fire characteristic model to come up with this discovery risk score that can then inform our programming. And what's really, really interesting about this technique is that it allows us to characterize not just risk across different kinds of discoveries, but also within a specific kind of discovery. So looking here at juniper trees, we can see that on average, a juniper tree is far more risky than the average thing that you could find on a parcel. But the most risky juniper trees are actually in the top 1% of all things that you could find anywhere in Marin. And so these would be really good candidates for direct abatement or direct assistance, right, to really target those, top 1% issues. So to date, we've done more than 500,000 discovery risk scores over the last 2 years, and this is on nearly 40,000 parcels. To date, we've looked primarily at an end of season bulk run. We take all the data that was recorded in a field season and we run it through the risk score model and we try to see what we can come up with in terms of data analysis. And this year, we're really excited to start moving that towards a real-time system where results are going to be available within 60 minutes back to Fireside so that they could include that in the resident report ranking. Also looking at developing dashboards that'll be updated at least weekly that will show as the season progresses, where is my risk? What risks have I been finding? Where geographically would it be good to do re-inspections because I know there's a high volume of risk on private parcels. And along with that, developing the softwares and the model that will support MWPA and member agencies' defensible space inspection programs as they grow. So making that software robust and scalable. Switching gears here for a second, moving over to vegetation management. So understanding how are fire behavior characteristics likely to change due to shaded fuel breaks, splats, other fuel management projects. So here, looking at taking the GIS footprint of where a treatment will occur, what kind of treatment will be applied, then predicting the future vegetation state over a 10-year lifespan of that project. So in 10 years.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
In 10 years, what does that vegetation look like after we've performed this treatment? Then we look at the change in fire behavior for years 1, 5, and 10 after that treatment. And then we come up with key metrics that relate to that change in fire behavior. So this is things like firefighting tactics that may be more accessible after treatment. Where is that treatment most effective, most efficient? And where should we be prioritizing maintenance of that treatment to maintain those benefits over time? So we just wrapped up the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break analysis. So looking at the change in fire behavior after initial treatment at year 1, we see a massive decrease in composite fire behavior over the entire project footprint, a 63% reduction in flame length, 2.2 time increase in area that's accessible to firefighters for direct attack, about a 1/3 reduction in fire rate of spread, and a really substantial reduction in the potential for canopy to carry fire within the project footprint.
And Scott,
But
if I can
yeah,
you
please.
just go back to that slide for a second? Just want to interrupt for really briefly. So obviously these are aggregated number at the like the entire project, but the same data is or very soon will be available for each of your jurisdictions. So you could see your area or a particular area of concern, the same metrics. And then in terms of rollout, I just want to say Scott is currently working on the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break. And then we'll be moving on to the San Rafael San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone next. And so on and so on. So there's a little bit of calibration for the first few projects take longer, but then there'll be a certain speed we can get to in terms of these assessments. Thank you, Scott. Please go ahead.
Sure. So we have really substantial benefits that we would see, expect to see in year 1 after treatment, but these benefits decay and they decay rather rapidly over time. So if we look at the sort of composite fire behavior at year 1, we would see about a 50% decrease. After 10 years, we would see this only 8% below what we expect to be our current baseline pre-treatment. So this really highlights the importance of maintenance. And this maintenance can be spatially heterogeneous in terms of where that maintenance is most important to maintain these benefits over the project lifespan. So these two projects are really interesting separately. They provide a lot of really interesting data to understand home hardening, the defensible space, the grant program, and as well as the vegetation management priorities. But what we're really excited about is bringing these two together to understand key metrics over space and time that integrate both of these. So for example, where are there areas on the landscape that have residual risk after we've done a fuel treatment? That could be mitigated through defensible space and home hardening. Another question we could ask is where are there areas in our fuel treatment that are likely to support firefighter action and direct attack that is adjacent to homes, and what do those homes look like in terms of home hardening, defensible space, and there's the other on-parcel characteristics, right? And then finally, we might ask, how do we prioritize new projects versus the maintenance of ongoing projects, right? That temporal aspect of these kind of analyses. And then I'll mention another thing that we're excited about this upcoming year is to move into this fire pathways modeling. This is a new and emerging wildfire modeling approach that looks at combinations of fuel, topography, and wind and where they all align to support rapid fire growth. So we're looking at this as a way to further contextualize and combine these two existing modeling approaches to understand not just how the two, the vegetation management and the on-parcel risk assessments come together, but where those things come together on a high fire growth pathway where fire rate of spread may exceed the firefighting response capacity. And then finally, I just want to wrap up here with some words about validation, right? So obviously, we want to make sure that the model is accurate and it has been validated when we are planning programs around the results of these analyses. So this is something we take seriously. So far, we've looked at a field validation experiment, which some of you may remember from last summer. This indicated agreement between what field inspectors assess as a hazard on parcel and those model scores. So that was exciting to see the agreement between these two sources. This work has also been reviewed by experts, including Steve Quarles, who some may know is a preeminent expert in sort of structure ignition risk. So it's nice to have his feedback incorporated in here. And then finally, going into this coming year, we're looking at validation by Milliman to understand model veracity and accuracy from an actuarial perspective. And then finally, working on some partner projects that will compare and contrast other models out there, understand the strengths and weaknesses of the model that we're using, other models that are out there, and then understand how we can combine those several models to create a best-in-class technology. So that's what I have for you today. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. And I think your last slide mentioned the closing comments I wanted to make, and those are that there is actually there's not a lot of modeling work out there that directly speaks to the transition between wildland fire and the built environment. Scott is, has developed one of them, but we are actively benchmarking with the two others that we know of out there and continuing to seek out other comparisons, because obviously if we are going to rely on models to prioritize our work and our resources, we need to ensure that those models are as solid as possible. I do want to add to one thing that Scott said, and that is that models are divided into several components, and we might adopt different model for different components. So Ambercast versus continuity, we will seek whatever is the best and the most solidly vetted out there for our decision making. Thank you, Scott.
I'd also like to note that you already have the slides from the planning and program manager's report and the and the work plan development update in your inboxes, and you'll be receiving these slides as well. We can also post them to the website.
Any questions?
Do we have any questions for Anne, Charlotte, or for Scott?
I do. Hello? I have a question. Hello?
Go ahead, Belle.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think this is really, really interesting and appreciate both what you sent out earlier and also this presentation. Thank you. I talked to a few other people and there are two questions I have related to veg management. The goal 1 on veg management that you've been working on, and one specific thing is that you mentioned that that you're going to have stakeholder specific fact sheets at some point, and just wondered whether there's an opportunity for us to have access to them or the public to have access to them, or when that's likely to happen, because they look quite interesting and valuable. That's one question. And the other has to do with assuming that this goes through and this turns out to be the model that is used. How are you going to deal with monitoring of this? Does this fit into, are you going to deal with that next, or is that something far in the future? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Belle, for the question regarding the fact sheet. So those essentially contain the data points that you saw on Scott's slides today, including maps and so on. We're just putting the finishing touches on there in terms of layout and other little details, and then we'll be sending, having our board approve them, and as soon as that happens, they'll be available for your review for release.
And in terms of monitoring, that is something that we're actively working on. We were engaging with various consultants, and we'll be reaching out to member agencies on monitoring and incorporating that into our GIS program, working with member agencies to monitor fuel regrowth within project areas for maintenance, and also tracking and our metrics, and trying to make that as easy as possible. And then thinking through kind of the additional monitoring that we might want to take on, and with partners such as UC Cooperative Extension and some others that we're reaching out to.
And then to complete the picture, I think in terms of on parcel, that would be through re-inspections that take place on private parcels. Scott, do you want to add anything to answer the question here, or Belle, did we address your question?
I think we did. I'll just add that I think it will be really exciting from a data perspective to have that monitoring data, because it will really let us test our assumptions for what's going into how we model, is particularly on the vegetation management side, really refining that to the vegetation management techniques that are in Marin in terms of how much fuel load accumulates over time, and really relating to that temporal dimension of the modeling.
Thank you.
When you had
Yeah, sort of actually along the monitoring lines, but I think the ability to prioritize private property risk is amazing, but I do think it's relying on data that was inputted that has a variety of quality controls there in terms of, just as an example, there might be a whole hedge of juniper, but one bush is taken a picture of with one geocode attached to that. And so I'm wondering how the modeling is accounting for either less than the number of pins per actual plants per se, and or inaccurate placement of pins, either because bad cell phone coverage, an inspector didn't walk the extra 10 feet, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And so like the simple answer is the model really gets whatever is coming out of Fireside. So really like what the resident sees in terms of like their report, right? So if there's a whole hedge and you only get one picture, that's really what the model sees. But I think there's a few key points there. One is we recently added the volume attribute in Fireside. So that now comes through to the model. So if the inspector has said, hey, this is actually a particularly large instance of this discovery, that will be reflected in the risk score, as well as I think trying to reduce maybe the sensitivity to having like 6 different vents on your house, right? Like some of that is kind of built into the modeling of if you have it once, right, that score kind of goes up. So while still being able to differentiate sort of between instances of the same discovery on a particular parcel. So I think in short, there are some ways that we're approaching that and trying to overcome some of those data barriers. But ultimately it is going to kind of come back to what is the inspector inspecting and how can we improve that data from a inspection perspective.
Thanks, that's helpful. And I think that probably brings up the follow-up question or idea of kind of how we go about training inspectors going into future seasons about not just the way that their data is impacting a resident, but that it's impacting modeling that I don't know if many people were aware of in prior years. And then if there are other important pieces there, I think with that training, I think the more we model and the more we're relying on data, the more we need to be also keeping tabs on the quality of that data going in, so. And then to switch gears, and this, I guess, maybe should have been a 7A comment. You mentioned kind of the JPA-wide project proposals and everything, and I'm just wondering, like, when we want to, you said talk to us, but like, should we be talking about this in this forum? I know you mentioned the ad hoc subgroups, maybe just a little more direction on that, because even just, hearing the chipper program and like, you mentioned additional zone pickups without, like, what are the dollars there? And as we all start developing our own projects, and I know we're stuck in that rock and a hard spot in terms of trying to figure out a budget without a budget, but also when do we want to have those discussions about those JPA-wide projects and things like that?
Yeah, that's why that's a great question. The JPA wide projects affect the budgets for everybody in the core bucket. And so that's why it's such a priority to think through them now. And so we've set a deadline of March 1st for entering them into the web portal so that we can get a better handle, and you guys will have a better handle of the budget for other core projects. And so that's the goal. And so thinking that through and communicating with us, entering things into the web portal, discussing however you'd like to, just reach out and we can discuss. And the JPA wide proposals will be, a topic of conversation in this setting probably next month.
Okay, that kind of addresses some of it. It's just that's kind of where I'm like struggling with March 1st and then next month, and just we could have a sidebar conversation with you, but it seems like if there's some JPA wide project proposals, even just now, if that's a worthy discussion for this environment, just to kind of get them out there, or even just some value in scaling, as we looked at like the ops committee's directive that didn't really include the like more or less money into the direct assistance resident support bucket. And if we as a group say yes more, yes less, I think that at least helps us all kind of maybe balance things a little more, but.
Since the item wasn't agendized, I don't think we can really have a robust conversation about it. What I would recommend is if each member agency has core proposals that they are really passionate about, that are concerned about any kind of funding, maybe reducing it, send me the emails and I will consult with staff and try to figure out what are the best ways of maybe getting some type of ad hoc committee in the interim before next meeting. So that way we can work through some of those issues.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to thank Scott for all the work that you did. I know for us in the fire service, we have a generalized idea of what fuels reduction does, and we know that it reduces the flame risk, it reduces the amount of energy released by a fire, but actually seeing the analytics actually is impressive to see that, what the actual Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, which was your modeling that you used this time, to actually put some hard numbers to that our elected officials can actually relate to. And I think that's excellent for us to be able to report that out. So I want to thank you for putting that together and look forward to seeing the future modeling that comes out of it. And then thank you to staff for putting that together as well. Moving on to item number 8, committee members' request regarding future agenda items. Do we have any requests for a future agenda item from anyone in the room?
I guess I would suggest at least putting on next meeting's agenda, like a project discussion. So if there is anything that needs warranted in this group, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's consistent with our approach last year, and that's the plan this year. Thank you.
And hey, Ruben, this is Jordan. I don't know if it's an agenda item, but as we're kind of engaging on expanding out beyond our communities and looking at some of the wildland pieces on ridgetops, curious if we could get an update or see what the results were from the Novato's effort with their their fire road assessment tools that they started. I don't know if that was an MWPA funded thing or not, but I know since Mike left, I haven't heard much from him, but I just was curious if that would be something we could look at to start utilizing maybe as a tool or start building off as we're kind of getting ready. We just got a CAL FIRE grant with San Rafael and state parks, for $1 million for San Pedro fire roads. And we have our own good assessments, kind of old school assessments, but if there was a tool that they developed, it'd be awesome to be able to utilize it.
Lynn, if at some point you could maybe bring that back to the group as a discussion item. Perfect. Thank you.
And then Ruben, I do have one more. Sorry to
That's okay.
be so vocal to today. I was just wondering if we have a process or if we could maybe help with lining out a little bit of a process for project development outside of kind of our project development season, and more it's relating to kind of getting going on some of the compliance pieces that are going to guide and whether or not we can actually look at doing some projects, not kind of having it limited to our project development window here, right? Like if right now there's a couple projects we've been working and looking at with some large property owners and others, and we'd like to kind of engage on some base level compliance and assessments now so that we could, and not have to put it into the work plan that then would have to get approved, and then the money's not there until whenever that would be. So we're not kind of stuck on this cycle of planning or we can at least get ahead of the cycle of planning, knowing that we will need to do a little bit of compliance. And I didn't know it. I know there was a bucket of money originally kind of set aside out of the core. And if there's a process for kind of looking at that, if we can send maps to Panorama or somebody else to get that kind of general assessment for these areas we're looking at.
Yeah, just in my opinion, I believe planning goes year round on these projects, not within this one window. And if you find a project that probably needs some environmental component to it, and it's something that you want to do and is outside the budget window, I think it's something we would have to talk to staff about. Whether
Yeah,
that,
maybe that's the question: is there a process for that, right? Like, how can we? Is that just a simple request, or is it, to certain or who's going to lead that, or who does? Because I think Todd and I have been talking about a few projects. We've been looking at some projects in West Marin, some down in Central Zone as well. So just want to stay ahead of it as opportunities starting to present themselves.
Yeah, I would say let's discuss and figure out what you're talking about, the extent of the environmental compliance that you're talking about, whether or not it fits into any previously approved projects. I mean, if we're talking about a whole new project with Measure C funds, that was not included in the last work plan and budget, would probably require board action to modify that, but we can do that.
Okay, and it also, I guess, it comes up for utilizing MWPA as that maybe the compliance foundation, when the projects aren't going to be funded by MWPA, right? If they're going to be funded, through state funds or state grants or federal grants, but we use the MWPA resources to, if we need to know if there's spotted owls in the areas, or if we need to do some basic level, for an NOE or something like that.
I'd say give me a call.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we got a few, so we'll give you a call for sure.
anyone on the screen that has recommendations for a future agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. What I'd like to request, if possible, would be, can we get an update on where we're at with the non-renewal issues with insurance companies? I know we keep continuing to get phone calls at the local level of where we're at for non-renewals, and trying to see where we're at as a county holistically, if we're moving the needle to try to reduce some of those non-renewal rates.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark provided an update to the operations committee recently, and I'm going to voluntold my boss to maybe join us next month and provide an update.
Perfect. And Martina,
In the meantime, we can send you the link to the video, Ruben, and in an update next month, I can inform you what kind of a 4 to 6 month range plan that we're putting together for that.
okay, perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Hey, Ruben, Jordan, Swerla, one last thing. The just
Hey, you're
FYI
running out
from
of
today,
hands, buddy.
CAL FIRE meeting today. The hazard fire severity zones have been approved by the state for the SRA, and they will be released to the public. So that's the new outputs for those. They will be released on April 1st, and then they're hoping a couple months later they will have the new hazard fire severity zones, which could affect all those other things we're talking about. That's hopefully a couple months behind that. So we should see an updated version of that pretty quickly here, which will definitely impact potential things related to your insurance, et cetera, et cetera.
Thanks, Jordan. With that, takes us to item number 9, and I would like to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.